Nobody likes bad movies. However, there's potentially nothing more frustrating than standing by a great film to the end, only to find the director couldn't stick the landing. Not every great movie has the perfect ending, as sadly we don't live in a perfect world. Yet, in some instances, a poor or just awkwardly fitted ending can be so detrimental to the rest of the film that it actually spoils everything you've seen before it. Often, such off-kilter endings come with the filmmaker's desire to wrap things neatly up, or just meddling studio interference. When the effect is so jarring, it can make you question everything that you've just witnessed and cause you to dismiss a movie that could have been truly, truly great. I'm Gareth from WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 movies that were great until their final scene. Number 10, 500 Days of Summer. A twist on the romantic comedy where the boy, Tom, doesn't end up with the girl of his dreams, Summer, after finding out they're simply not compatible. After that revelation, you'd assume 500 Days of Summer had its bittersweet ending, with Tom starting over by trying to break into the architecture field and begin his dream job, and without him feeling the need to validate himself by entering into a new relationship. But it all goes a bit wrong when Tom meets a girl in his interview who he asks on a date, gets a name, she's called Autumn because that's incredibly original, and smugly winks at the camera, suggesting a whole new relationship is now on the cards. This entire scene feels tacked on, miles away from the smart subversive movie that came before it, and a sudden descent into generic rom-com territory. Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Zooey Deschanel deserve better, damn it. Number 9, Love is Strange. When long-term partners Ben and George finally marry, George is fired from his job, and the pair are forced to live with friends at opposite sides of New York to make ends meet while they search for a smaller apartment. Ira Sachs's film is sweetly romantic, and it becomes achingly so as the feature moves along. As Ben and George spend more time apart, the desire to see them back again grows. Finally, they get their apartment, and all is well in the world. Until Ben dies off-screen, meaning the audience is not just denied the possibility of seeing him and George together again, but Sachs kills one of his leads off so callously the viewer doesn't even get a last glimpse of him. It feels oddly harsh to end with George alone in the apartment he wanted to share with his husband. Almost as though the director was hoping to wring those last few tears out of the viewer just because he could. Number 8, The Village. M. Night Shyamalan's period horror focuses on a small village apparently terrorized by a monster that lives in the surrounding woods. Ivy Walker, the blind daughter of one of the village elders, decides to tackle the creature head-on by venturing into the forest to confront it, after hearing that the monster may actually be a ruse to keep people from leaving the village. A poorly handled, ill-advised twist reveals the monster was actually Adrian Brody in a costume all along, and that the villagers are living a 19th century life in a 21st century world, with the modern world existing just beyond the forest. The double twist renders everything we've just seen utterly pointless. After Signs, which also ended on a sour note, The Village definitely marked the moment when audiences began turning away from Shyamalan, and he only had himself to blame. Number 7, I Am Legend. This film is a sci-fi blockbuster about the last man on Earth living out his days in New York dodging vampires as he tries to come up with a cure. The film is a canny thriller and surprising character study, focused on a completely isolated, emotionally wrecked, and possibly insane Will Smith giving one of his greatest ever performances. The film admittedly doesn't all work before it reaches the end. The needless CGI'd vampires done using actors in makeup and latex on set, who were later painted over with pixels in post-production, threaten to undermine the whole affair. But that's nothing compared to the lazy climax in which Smith's scientist sacrifices himself in order to allow 2 survivors to escape to a human colony that was waiting just a few miles away the whole time. The film's original ending, which admittedly didn't test well with early audiences, made more sense and should not have been meddled with by the studio. Will Smith died in vain, man. Number 6, The Wolverine. Mature, heartfelt, and finely acted for the best part of the film, this is the standalone Wolverine films that fans wanted. It's not perfect, but this X-Men spin-off adapted from one of the great Wolverine stories is the best that anyone could have hoped for after that Origins flop. Where it all goes wrong. The old friend of Wolverine's that lured him to Japan fights Wolverine inside of a giant samurai-styled end-boss armor in order to trap the mutant and absorb his immortality. Something the character could have done earlier in the film with less difficulty and without involving so much brainless destruction. A quieter showdown between the two would have been more fitting with the overall tone. But this lame, loud finale has no regard for what's come before it, and wastes what potential placing Lone Wolf Wolverine in a land of honor actually had. Number 5. Kill Bill Volume 2. Part 2 of Quentin Tarantino's East to West revenge epic, Kill Bill Volume 2 is the movie in which wronged anti-hero, the Bride, finishes off the last of head honcho Bill's goons in her quest to finally reach the main man himself. At the end of the second part, which is chock full of trademark glorious Tarantino dialogue and a major action set piece set in a trailer, the Bride discovers her true identity, tracks down Bill, and faces off against him in one final duel. The people on the Bride's hit list die like this. Oren Ishii has the top of her head sliced off, Vanita Green is beaten and has a knife thrown at her heart, Bud is deceived and bitten to death by a snake, Ellie Driver is left blind and at the mercy of a black mamba, and Bill, the number one target in the entire film, is prodded to death. After 4 hours of waiting, there's no great battle, nothing that even tries to reach the heights of Volume 1's House of Blue Leaves sequence. The Bride simply uses a special technique, giving him and the entire audience a heart attack. Number 4. Fury. Fury is a grim war-as horror film in which a tank crew led by Brad Pitt's cynical war daddy must navigate through German territory at the tail end of World War II. David Ayer's film is unsparingly brutal, right up until its last scenes when the crew of the Fury face down an elite unit of German soldiers alone in a hellish standoff full of fire and blood. With every member of the crew dead except for War Daddy and Logan Lerman's Norman, enemy troops approach the tank to finish off whoever's been decimating their comrades. Then War Daddy reveals there's a secret hatch underneath the tank that you never knew about. And just as a German grenade is thrown into the Fury to finish the pair off, Norman escapes. When Norman's discovered below the vehicle by an enemy soldier, the soldier simply keeps quiet and lets Norman off. In short, this cheap ending feels like a Hollywoodized conclusion to an otherwise realistically nasty film. Number 3. The Game. David Fincher's twistiest movie, and that is saying something. The Game sees Michael Douglas's Nicholas Van Orton receive the worst birthday gift ever. Invited to take part in the titular game, he accepts the mysterious offering. But his application is initially rejected. Then he discovers the company behind the game have drained his bank account, are now hunting him, and have turned his friends and loved ones against him. Or have they? Is he really in danger? Is this the game? My head hurts. Guessing whether or not this character is involved in some elaborate rich person activity or genuinely in danger is the backbone of the game. And there's frankly a ridiculous amount of hugely enjoyable twists along the way. Not even David Fincher could tie all the different threads together by the end though. And Douglas's character attempts to kill himself by jumping off of a building, only to crash into his own birthday party full of his celebrating friends, revealing he was in a game all along. Haha, shocking. It's shocking, but only serves to suck all the tension and suspense out of the past hour and a half of plot. The real game was the friends we made along the way, I guess, or something weird like that. Number 2, The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. The third chapter in Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings saga, The Return of the King is an appropriately bombastic, action-heavy trilogy capper. Having journeyed from one end of Middle-earth to the other, the group of heroes that the audience has come to love carry out their various missions, ridding the land of Sauron and his armies of darkness by ultimately destroying the One Ring. It's not the one ending, it's the whole series of endings that's the problem. Almost as if Peter Jackson couldn't bear to say goodbye to the universe he'd created, The Return of the King's post-battle climax seems to go on forever, giving a breakdown of almost every character's fate after the ring's destruction, and then carrying on until it feels like you're watching a supercut of several movies ending at once. Number 1. AI Artificial Intelligence. Steven Spielberg's dystopian science fiction take on Pinocchio features a robotic humanoid named David, who finds himself adopted by a family grieving for their comatose son. When the son awakes and David is rejected, he goes on a dark fairy tale-like journey across an America changed by global warming and class division, with the fairy tale finally coming to an end when David becomes trapped underwater, asking wishes of a statue of the blue fairy as his power source slowly runs down. The film cuts to 2,000 years later, when advanced mechas come to rescue David and grant him his wish of bringing his mother back to life for one day. So she, David, and his walking, talking teddy bear can spend one joyous moment together. Spielberg has argued that the ending on show in this film is the one that original director Stanley Kubrick wanted. But that's hard to believe when Spielberg has so often fallen victim to shoddy ending syndrome. Arguably Spielberg's biggest flaw as a director stopped this underrated gem from becoming a masterpiece. And that's our list. Which great films do you think soured in their final scene? Let me know all about them in the comment section below. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, why not head over to whatculture.com and check out some more articles like this very one. I've been Gareth from whatculture.com. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm sure I'm gonna see you soon.